welcome to Andy Dennert's Reality Blurred. I'm the aforementioned Andy, the creator of Reality Blurred, and a writer who believes in the power of true stories. Every week I'll take you behind the scenes of reality TV and my writing. On today's show, reality TV in crisis! Once again, there's a national media panic about reality shows, this time focused on The Bachelorette. I'll discuss that crisis. As always, I have some recommendations for you. And stick around to the end for life advice from reality TV, this time from a supermodel of the world. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me and having me in your ears or car speakers or whatever speakers you have this podcast coming out of. I appreciate it, and I appreciate this chance to chat with you about what's happening in reality TV, which brings us to our first topic and the department I call Unscripted Updates, where I discuss something from the news. This time, it's all over the news, so probably something you have not missed, but it's the Bachelorette season being pulled off the air by ABC with just days to go after video of Taylor Frankie Paul, that was the star of the season, emerged of her throwing metal stools at her on-again, off-again lover, ex, whatever you want to call him, Dakota. One of those stools struck her 5-year-old from a previous relationship, and she was arrested for that. Now, I don't want to go any further before I say that it is obviously awful and horrible that a child was injured. Violence against children, bad, period, done. Like, I shouldn't even have to say that. No question. And of course, domestic violence is not a joke. It is very serious. Relationship abuse is something that people deal with, and it is also not okay and not to be trivialized. I also want to acknowledge, though, that what we know about Taylor and Dakota's relationship is limited, and even the video that we saw was filmed by Dakota and picks up kind of in the middle of something. And in that video, you can hear Taylor repeatedly refer to something that Dakota has done physically to her beforehand, which is also what we see in the body cam footage of police coming to arrest her that night, which was on the very first episode of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. That's the show that Taylor came from. That's significant because The Bachelor and Bachelorette have typically drawn their leads from within the franchise. So The Bachelor will pull people from The Bachelorette and vice versa. So it becomes like an ongoing soap opera storyline, and we can forget about the fact that these dating and relationships don't really work out. So we can just kind of follow another person on their quest the next season and forget about the wreckage that's in the past. Last year, ABC did not air a season of The Bachelorette. The showrunners were fired, quit, left, whatever happens in Hollywood where people exit after being accused of creating a toxic workplace. People lost their jobs from that show because, as we've discussed before, reality TV shows are produced by freelancers who go from show to show. This is not, some people have regular freelance gigs and regular shows and may stay on shows the entire year round. So when shows like this go away, that obviously affects a lot of people, hundreds of people even. Then ABC announced that they were bringing The Bachelorette back, this time with Taylor. I actually thought this was a really smart move because she's one of the stars of another hit show, The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, on Hulu, of course, also owned by Disney, like ABC. So they're bringing in somebody who already has a fan base in the same way that, bringing in someone from The Bachelor onto The Bachelorette would accomplish that same thing. But this time they're kind of widening the lens a little bit. Maybe you're bringing in a little bit of a new audience. What I want to make explicitly clear, and I think is still kind of being lost in all of this media coverage and discussion about all of this, is how none of this should have been or was a surprise at all. Last Thursday, the video was released and we saw what happened, and it was horrifying. However, we've known what happened since the very first episode of season 1 of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, because that was part of the episode. That was literally the cliffhanger. Police coming to Taylor and Dakota's house and arresting Taylor. That is always been there. We knew about she was arrested and charged for multiple things, including endangerment of or abuse of a child because of the child's injury. She ended up pleading to a lesser charge, and those other charges were dropped. I don't know why. I don't think we really understand what happened in all of those legal proceedings. But Disney knew this. Hulu knew this. Warner Brothers, the producers of The Bachelorette, knew this. Everyone who went on The Bachelorette, if they knew that the star was Taylor Frankie Paul, would have known this because they could just look her up and there it is. So when Disney released a statement, or ABC released a statement on Thursday saying this, and hear me quote them, "In light of the newly released video that just surfaced today, we have made the decision not to move forward with a new season of The Bachelorette at this time, and our focus is on supporting the family." End quote. To which I say, that's a bunch of bullshit. If your focus was on supporting the family, you wouldn't have aired police showing up to their house where there's a crying child in the middle of a domestic abuse situation. And again, I don't want to pretend that I understand what was going on between them or who's responsible, or, obviously Taylor is responsible for the stool that she threw hitting her child. But beyond that, there's a lot of questions, and, Dakota's responsibility is something that I think remains a question. Anyway, if they wanted to support that family, they wouldn't have aired that. They would have kept to The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives' other storylines, which are lighter and fluffier. And when I reviewed the show last January, when it was airing on ABC after its Hulu debut a few months earlier, I headlined it, "Secret Lives of Mormon Wives' Low-Stakes Melodrama is the reality TV we need right now." So basically saying, this is a lot of silly fluff, like a group of friends who do TikTok videos together and had a controversy about swinging among their friend group. All that stuff is just light and fun and great. But I also wrote in that review, and I'll quote myself, "One not at all low-key event comes at the end of the first episode, an incident of domestic violence that injured a child." So again, we knew about this. Disney knew about it. ABC knew about it. So for them to now suddenly pretend that it's bad or not okay when it was always bad and always not okay, and that never stopped them before, is precious, to say the least. Of course, seeing the video is different than reading about it or hearing people describe it, but the end result is the same in terms of what actually happened. And I think that's something that's getting lost in a lot of the media coverage, is the fact that they are all culpable in this, right? Like sometimes all of a sudden there's like one of these kind of reality TV explosions where it's like, oh my gosh, this person on this show turned out to be someone who is posting horrible racist shit online. And isn't that a shock? And they're like, we checked and we didn't find this. And like, and we're somehow willing to believe that their background checks are that bad. And it just, okay, yeah, like that's just, it's their fault. But this is the thing, we constantly let the companies and the businesses behind these decisions get away with them. Now, I'm not suggesting that there's one person who's individually responsible for this. And there are a lot of people who are affected by it, as I mentioned, in terms of the freelancers who produce these shows. And there's a lot of people who work on shows and do a really good job, an ethical job, want to take care of the cast, want to make a good show, want to give them a good experience. And then there's people who have an obligation to shareholders and to ratings and to money. All of the people who are on camera, behind the camera, are not participating in any major way in this profit. So the millions or billions of dollars that the Bachelor franchise has made over its decades of life is not coming back meaningfully to the people that produce the show. And we, as the public, are sort of like, oh, they're on it to get famous, that they get Instagram followers and, promotions, and that's how, so everything that happens on the show is therefore justified. I don't buy that. Look at shows like sitcoms, like Friends, where those cast members were being paid millions of dollars. I think, was $1 million an episode or more than that? Anyway, people get paid a lot of money per episode, and that's not even close, right? Obviously, in Survivor, the winner gets $1 million, and that's 13 episodes of television. So for being on 13 episodes of television, that person is getting $1 million, and no one else is getting anywhere near that. And of course, taxes and stuff come out of that salary or prize, because it's a prize. It's not a salary. We don't pay people generally, except really tiny amounts of money as like per diems. My point here is that in this kind of like media hand-wringing about reality TV and its ethics, and oh my gosh, how could this happen? The corporations, the people who are moving all these levers behind the scenes tend to avoid culpability. There's a bunch of headlines even that just directly blame Frankie, which really, and I guess just really pissed me off, to be honest. Like, there's one in Vulture, and this is from the Instagram version of the story. It says, Taylor Frankie Paul broke The Bachelor. And the story itself is much more nuanced. It's written by a writer that I know and appreciate her writing and her reporting, and it's much more nuanced. And I realize writers and journalists often don't create their own headlines for stories, or multiple headlines get used, and social media people create headlines and summaries. So there's all kinds of layers here. But just people scrolling through Instagram and seeing Taylor broke The Bachelor is placing the blame on the people with the least amount of power in the situation. The other kind of headline that we get a lot of, and I'll just kind of like browse some of these, it's like Taylor Frankie Paul and the downfall of the Bachelor empire. Taylor Frankie Paul was never going to save The Bachelorette. The Bachelorette scandal reveals how reality TV has corroded media and viewers. It's time to end the Bachelor franchise. And so there's all this kind of stuff. And I think I probably agree with a lot of these arguments, a lot of the nuance here, a lot of the points that are being made by critics, by reporters. I think this kind of conversation is really useful ultimately. It's good for us to look at how these shows are treating people, how people treat the people they watch on those shows. But I think there's something really instructive and useful about reality TV, or I wouldn't be doing this work, which is to say it helps us learn about people and behavior and decide what's okay and what's not, and also try to figure out what things would be okay for us in, like, whether it's in a game context like The Traitors or Survivor, or in the context of people's real lives, like on The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Even a show like that that's very produced, where they're, going to dinners or parties, and it's like kind of being planned with producers, so we know the cast members that'll be together. They're still real people having actual interaction. Their lives continue before and after the cameras are rolling. I guess what I wish is that we would interrogate reality TV and all television production in a way that really like looks at the power structures behind it, who's profiting from it, how they're treating people, how they are operating. Like, it's almost as precious and ridiculous as Disney's statement about, we care about the family, that kind of thing. To say that, like, all of a sudden, like, this, The Bachelor is broken now. Like, this show has been, and this franchise has been, an absolute fucking shit show, dumpster fire for decades. There has been story after story and season after season where they have behaved horribly and done things that are unethical and gross, and all just in the pursuit of making this dramatic show that will generate tons of headlines. And people generate those headlines and stories and treat it as gossip and look at that surface level of here's how the people are behaving. And again, don't look at what's behind that. For example, the Bachelor franchise avoided casting a Black woman as the Bachelorette for years and years, and they finally did. And what happens? They also cast a person who'd posted racist and bigoted messages all over social media, and then went on the show and accused one of his fellow men on the show, a Black man, of being quote unquote aggressive toward him, and basically just became a walking example of these kind of microaggressions or actual aggressions, never mind all that social media activity. And then they leaned into that, which is to say they exploited it. They basically encouraged that tension. They played it up. They created kind of like a, let's send the racist guy and the Black man and the Black Bachelorette, Rachel, on a date together and see what happens. And that's just one example. That's, again, like, we have 40 seasons to get a Black woman as the lead of the show, and that's what they did to her. So there's nothing that's really new here, except we're getting another example of it. I will say that there's some media coverage that has treated that pretty fairly and kind of gone through this history or given this some context, and I appreciate that, and I think we need more of that. But what we need less of is the piling on of the people who are sort of at the like kind of gossip level. And I'm gonna, I guess, one more disclaimer here. Taylor is not like absolved of guilt, responsibility, etc. I just think that like in terms of The Bachelorette and this season being canceled, that has nothing to do with her. That is entirely something that she like, this is not something that we need to blame her for. Ultimately, I think it's really good when we think about how TV is made, reality TV is made, who makes it, how they make it, how they're compensated for that, the crew, the people on the show, how they're treated, how they're cast, how they're presented, how they're edited. Those are great conversations. We had versions of that with the traders this season, those conversations. And also I think it's important to look at, again, this kind of systemic things in a show, in a franchise, but then in a company, how are the capitalistic pressures affecting these decisions? Like, is it, are we just trying to desperately make more and more money out of this machine and these people? And how are we all participating in that? Like, am I participating in that by talking about this right now or writing about it in multiple ways? Like, perhaps, but I guess I get a little bit annoyed, upset, sad that when something rises to the level of getting a certain kind of national media coverage, it always tends to be like this, oh my gosh, look what this person did, and can you believe it? And reality TV is trash, and then let's forget about it. That's what the kind of gets to the peak consciousness, if there is such a thing anymore in terms of our culture, if people are all aware of the same thing that's happening, we don't get to those deeper levels. And maybe something like this can help us get there eventually. But I just wish we could have these conversations when we're not panicking over a horrifying video and when we're just thinking about the TV that we watch week to week. Okay, on to recommendations, where I share things that are bringing joy and entertainment into my life. Today is a dating show that is not The Bachelorette. It's as far away from it as you could possibly get. It's called Dating Around, and it's on Netflix. It's one of the 5 dating shows I recommended on Sunday instead of The Bachelorette. So if you were missing it or people wanted to watch something romancy, I had 5 other shows to recommend. And Dating Around was number 1 on the list. It was the very first show that Netflix did with dating, and unfortunately, it only lasted 2 seasons and then went away, but it is delightful. If you have not seen it, find it on Netflix because it is totally worth your time. It is gorgeously shot and edited in such a creative way that is both engaging to watch and also does a really good job of kind of exploring what dating is like, where there's kind of people who are interchangeable. For example, you see someone sit down at a bar, meet their date for the first time, they're having a drink, and then it cuts from her to the guy, cuts back to her, and cuts back to the guy, and now the guy is a completely different person. And they accomplish this by sending these daters on multiple dates to the same locations. So basically she would meet several guys at that same spot, and then they're editing and cutting between them. So you get to compare and contrast. And the same is true of all of the other relationships too. Also, Dating Around isn't just like heterosexual relationships. There are queer people on the show. So you get interesting pairings that we normally don't see on dating reality TV. But just beautiful to watch, really quick episodes. And kind of through the night, it's like maybe you hit it off at the bar, then you have dinner. And if you hit it off at dinner, then maybe you go to get drinks somewhere afterwards. So, and then people kind of fall off during that process when it's clear that there's no interest from either of them or one of them or both of them. It's great. So check out Dating Around on Netflix. That's everything for today. Thank you so much for listening. Feel free to send me your feedback, questions, and thoughts. And if you're in a 5-star mood, tap those in your podcast app of choice. It really does help people find this. Our theme song is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. And this episode is by me, Andy Dennert. And it's copyright 2026 by Reality Blurred LLC, which is also me. You can find me at realityblurred.com and andydennert.com. I'll leave you today with life advice from reality TV, this time from supermodel Iman, who was talking to the contestants on RuPaul's Drag Race backstage.
For you guys, it takes courage, right? In an environment and a world that is not courageous. The world pretends to be courageous. It's not. So it's just to stay on the path and live joyously. Live joyously. Don't let them rob your joy.